And we're online. So hello and welcome to Avocado Sprint 55 release meeting. As usual, we'll go through the done items and have time to share the priorities and where are we heading. Ideally, please mute yourself and unmute and when you need to say something. So to our Trello board. So this sprint is called Never Let Me Go, and we work on improve the A string to save path to work on Windows machine. Recently, we got a request from a user who was running Avocado on Linux, but then viewed the results on Windows machine that it's actually impossible to follow the links because they contain banned characters. We address this in our string library. So if you're using this function, it's now Windows friendly. We did not include the fix for number of characters as it's controversial and currently no user spotted some issues with it. Then we have experiment MOOCs look for a way to remove white spaces between the YAML tag and the colon. We did not work on this, but we decided not to basically spend any more time on this. The issue is basically this, that in our YAML files, you need to specify a tag, then a space and colon. Well, it would be more natural to use it like this, but due to limitations, we were not able to find a way to specify the filter this way. So if you know the solution, feel free to contribute, but as this became a standard like years ago, I think it doesn't make sense to change it unless it's pretty simple fix. Then we have announced the YAM repository is back online. Yes, basically you may have spotted that our repository was down due to some migration, and it's back online on the same address, so no workarounds are needed anymore. Get rid of Virtus Devel mailing list. If you follow this project for a longer time, it started as autotest Virtest project, and it used the same mailing list. But nowadays we moved to Avocado umbrella, and all the discussions, including Virtest, should happen there and not in the Virtest mailing list anymore. So this list had been frozen, and just use the Avocado one.
Has the list been deleted, Clever?
It has been archived.
Good.
So, yeah.
Yep, you can still access the archives if you need to. Next, do we want to store any kind of objects into YAML files? This was a controversial topic. Basically, right now we serialize everything into a JSON to store the results, to store the environment. And on replay, you're unable to deserialize objects like, for example, Python object. And we were considering whether this limitation should be treated and decided not to do it because it would be dangerous, because basically this is unsafe construction. And if you need to store Python objects between execution, you should use data there and custom pickle or unpickle, but not our multiplexer.
Yep, you can inject some pretty nasty stuff there.
Mm-hmm. Then we have test.data directory should include the variant ID. Basically, Kleber, do you want to talk about this a bit?
Yeah. So originally we had an API in Avocado Instrumental Test that, of course, was available to test that inherit from it, which is the data dir. That API allows one to access data files inside that directory. The thing is, we were not covering situations where actually talking about the data dir before, the definition of the data dir has been a directory with the same name as the test file plus a .data suffix. So if you had test.py, the test data would be test.py.data. The problem with that is that if you have more than one test in a single file, that would be a problem. So using data.dir, if you had a test like this, get data.py, the data.dir would be get data.py.data, and you would only be allowed to have a single directory for data files, which conflicts with the fact that a single test file can actually host multiple tests. So on this situation where you have, say, test A and then test B, the two tests would actually share the same data directory. That could be a problem depending on how the user actually wrote the test, but that is definitely a problem for how Avocado also makes use of the data files. So one of the use of data files is the recording of the expected output and error of tests, and that conflict with that. So the new API that we have introduced is this get data API. So instead of accessing .data.gir and combining that, joining that with the name of the file you're looking for, you actually use get data and the name of a file. And the way this works is that it transparently looks for the most specific location to the least specific location for this given data file. So in an instrumented test, like the avocado default test, there are possibly 3 locations. The most specific one, it's a location which combines the variant name, the test name, and finally the file level name. So for test A, when run within a variant, we would have something like get data.py.data, the name of the test, say test A, and then, get test.test.A, and then the name of the variant. So let's get the short variant name. So this would be one of the directories that would be looked for, be consulted when looking for a data file. If the file does not exist there, it would look in the less specific directory, which would be the file level directory. So a data file would be looked for in this location. And finally, the file level based location would be looked for. So it's a fix and at the same time a new interface. And it's a generic enough interface that should allow classes, different test types, to implement their own get data files. So if a different test type has completely different semantics, doesn't have the notion of multiple tests associated with a given test file, or has extra sources for test files, it should be simple enough to implement that. So these changes are documented and users can refer to that.
Looks pretty nice.
Yep. Basically, the idea is maybe to look, for example, in Avocado VT and allow to use the get data for like dependencies, etc. But we will see. It should scale enough. And next one is the bug output check record does not respect test name, which is basically the same fix. Or do you want to say more about this, Kleber?
No, basically, yeah, I briefly mentioned that Avocado itself uses the data.dir for the output check record. We faced this limitation when we were using like this. The example that you're showing makes that pretty clear. So test A and test BBB, if they happen to print out different content and that was being used in the output check feature, we would have like a failure on this on the second test, just because we could not relate different expected file for different tests within a single file. And this is now fixed with those changes. Like it now uses get data instead of data dir / standard error or / standard out dot expected.
Okay. Then we have introduced Golang test plugin by Amador, and I think you have a demonstration, right?
Yes, I do. Well, this is a new optional plugin. It will be released as a separate package as usual, so you have to install the corresponding package. It's basically a loader and runner plugin. You can see with avocado list -- loaders that the Golang plugin is now available here. It means that we will have a new test tab called Golang. The main goal of this plugin is to actually discover and run Golang tests. This is important to use avocado in different environments, like you use avocado as a test runner for a different test API or language. Just as an example, I have here this project, this base project called golang.org/x/text. There are some test files inside this Golang package. I can discover them using avocado list. We will have a nice level of granularity here. We will discover the test methods. And if you want to run one of them, you can use the same avocado test references standard, which includes the possibility to specify here an string to inform the test method that you want to run, like test transform here. You can filter by that string, and you can, of course, run only the tests that will match that string filtering. One important thing to mention here is that Golang has a definition of subtests. So a test like this one, it can have subtests within that test. And in Avocado, we don't have that concept. So for example, test transform norm, this one, it shows in the avocado list command as one test because we have only one test method here. But if we run that one, let's see what happens into the avocado log. Okay, so inspecting the logs now, after running that Golang test, we have the corresponding command that actually was used to execute that test. And we inform the test transform norm test to be executed, but that test itself, it has like a number of subtests. And in Avocado, we don't have the concept of subtests, but we still accept the language. I mean, the formation string that can be used to identify this subtest for the goal test. And then you can use that inside your test reference like this. For example, you can use this test transform norm. These will be used to filter the test method, and these will be passed to the goal test command to filter the subtest. So it will work out of the box. We are not showing the subtest here in the UI, but we are making sure that only the subtest that matches that description will be executed.
Mm-hmm. So Amador, how do you think we can map those subtests to plain avocado tests, such as just the way we do with variants, for example?
Yeah, it would be possible, but it's not that easy to map those subtests doing static analysis like we do. We would have to like load the tests and really inspect the loaded objects the same way that Golang does. So I'm not sure it would be worth it, the effort, and also the fact that we would have to load the tests, and that's something that we are strongly against in Avocado. So
yep.
Maybe I think we have a good level of like granularity with this Golang plugin, and if something comes up, if some user comes with a use case that he needs like more granularity, go all the way down to the subtest, then we would evaluate that. But before that, I don't think we should like work on that.
Sure, I was just curious.
Actually, I don't think it would be expected because the subtest in Go is, if I understood correctly, a bit different than a subtest in Avocado. It's more like we have multiple tests. That's like our level, but the subtest can be actually run in parallel, and that would be really like troublesome. Yes.
Okay. Sure.
But I'm not Golang expert.
Yeah, and they are actually part of the they are defined inside the test functions. They don't have test method, they have test functions, and they are defining the subtests inside that function. So it's sometimes it's executed depending on some given condition. So it's like too much complex to discover what subtests would be really executed only with static analysis.
Yeah, I think if we were to improve the support, not only for Golang, but probably for other kind of tests, these would probably be a better map into something like noteworthy events or phases, something like that inside the Avocado logs. Just like maybe the UI could even show that different like stages are going on, but the mapping still makes sense in Avocado to be just one.
Yeah, it's basically like beaker or maybe content in context in Avocado VT.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
Okay, that's all.
That's it. Okay. So finally support for Go tests, and then we have a bug fix for standard output and standard error, which was buffered incorrectly. Basically, it could happen if you had tests like this, that nothing was actually produced in the output because of the last not line, which was not finished with /n, was not recorded. So this was addressed.
Because of buffering.
Yeah, actually, we flushed the buffer, but only when we already closed the logger for the file.
Right.
Then we have refine avocado utils pci.getDomains method. This is, I think, by IBM guy. And basically, they are using this function to get some information from P-series machines. And they needed to refine the return, so it now does not return the port level. There was actually no change on my power machine, because my power machine returns the other kind of, I mean, you have two different formats, and on my machine there was no change. So if you see issues with this, feel free to raise issues, but it should not affect you much. And then we have Python 3 avocado without arguments should produce the identical output to Python 2. This is part of Cleber's initiative to move towards Python 3 compatibility, and you can now actually safely execute avocado with no arguments and get output. I was wondering for some applause, never mind. Get rid of flexmog dependency in our functional unit tests. Another like simplification by Kleber to avoid unnecessary dependency. And we went with actually with mock, which is more standard nowadays. Next, we have bug output check record adds a new line for simple tests by Amador. So this was a bit similar to the new line fix. Basically, we are using Python logging to produce those files, and they add new line kind of start by default. So he went ahead and modified the emit method.
I think he just got the new line from this one and moved to the other bug and fixed 2 bugs just by moving a new line. I'm joking. Bad joke.
Okay. So and then MA now you should like the results should be better now. Then we have serialized test IDs contain colon character or invalid on Windows. We already talked about this one. And we have fix VM spice options usage to allow VM create with different params. Basically, there was a potential issue where you run 2 spice commands, 2 spice machines in 2 spice tests in a row, and the representation could be broken. I mean, the representation and the actual executed machine. And this was addressed by Andre. Then we have packaging. And I mean, the result is that it's not treated, but the false negative can't happen. I mean, the representation will be always correct, but you may get unnecessary recreates with this patch, which can just like slow down a bit the execution, but it's only for spice and only on some occasions. Next, we have bug packaging setup PY mentions examples YAML. This is like internal fix or packaging fix. Then we have log git commit of the executed avocado and not the current dir. It could have happened before that you executed avocado, for example, from RPM, but if you were located inside the avocado git repository, it logged as a version the current dir avocado and not the one which is executed, which is fixed now. And that's it for this sprint. We still have some work in progress. Some are near to merge. So if I remember correctly, let's go through the work in progress, and we'll add like one feature, which probably will be part of this release, and that is allow per test sysinfo collection, because if the third version works well,
it works well on my box. Just Travis is having issues with that. Just like a longer time. I think it's just a matter of rebasing.
Okay.
Retesting.
So basically, this card probably will end up in this sprint, and let me demonstrate it with a different window. Hopefully it's this. So basically, what it's all about, we had a user, he runs a bunch of tests, and he uses profilers to see, to record the activity of the test. But right now we only support profilers or even job collection per job and not per test. So I went ahead, and now you can actually enable it per test as well in avocado-conf. Here you have the sysinfo collect section where you can enable profilers. It was already there, and then you have you can enable per test collection, which is you can see on my box it's enabled right now. And I don't use the actual profilers, but I created profilers. So let me show you how they look like. I have a profiler journal CPL, probably not important, but I do have a top -D1 -B enabled on every execution. Sorry, I can't override it because I'm not root. And now I can run some test, let's say external runner /bin/stress, and now CPU, one single CPU stressor and then 10 CPU stressors. And when I execute them, it will take 5 seconds each. I can take a look at, so yeah, let me just go to the latest results. And here you can see that I have a sysinfo profile top profiler, and here you can see that throughout the job execution, it collected the data, but I also get like first and second test, and in the first test you can see profiler top, and you can see that here I have a single stress utilizing my CPU, and also Firefox and Google Talk consuming quite a lot. And hopefully in this second test you will see multiple stress commands and also Firefox and Google Talk. So I guess it's understandable, right? Or any questions about this?
Sure. I guess the HTML report has to be slightly modified to support that.
It doesn't have to, because by default you get the profilers and a pre-test sysinfo collection, and you can find the per test sysinfo directly in the output. I mean, I can oh, I do not have to turn this off. Let me just show it to you. So
I think what Lucas says is that possibly it would benefit from also listing that information, maybe in a drop down or something.
That's probably not the highest priority ever, but
I mean, yeah, let me show it to you. So it looks like this. You have a sysinfo section here, which is pre-tests and post-tests, which is basically the overall job profilers. I mean, you can see I don't use the stock options, so it's slightly simpler. And then to find out the test ones, you can just go here and you see sysinfo collection.
Yep. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, the point is that that information is not in the sysinfo, like in the HTML file, but in the sysinfo dir. And
yes,
that is actually, yeah, there is room for improvement there, because if we ship just the HTML report to somebody, they would have access to the job level sysinfo, but not.
Well, I mean, you have the same limitation for debug log, so I don't see an issue with it.
True.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think it's not a huge problem, and probably the way the report is structured right now is not the ideal way to do it for multiple tests. We would need, you know, another structure to display those results, but I don't think it's a huge issue.
Yeah, it's tricky to find the right balance, the amount of information that we should put into.
Yep. I guess what we have right now is fine. You know, pre-test, post-test, this is fine to me. If you want to know more, then you can drill down and click on the test results directory.
Yep. Like for me, this is ideal, but feel free to open issues on GitHub and we can discuss possible improvements. Like those two, like don't forget that this is a link to output to debug log, the actual file, and this is the link to the results directory directly.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, and that's it, right? This is what made it to this release, which hopefully will be released like during tomorrow, probably. Or
yeah, there's also another pull request that is about to be merged. So I'm putting my bets on that feature as well, which is the diff. Just instead of showing the full output?
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about this one. Yeah, so Amador, if you can elaborate about it a bit.
Yeah, we basically have the output check record where we can create an output expected file for the test and compare the expected output with the actual output of that test. And that feature already exists. And the new implementation here is that we are now logging the difference between those two files in unified diff format into the logs, and also creating a file with that content. I can actually quickly show the feature here, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Yeah, so basically, I have this script which will be used as a test. It creates this output here, and I have an stdout.expected file with the expected output. Avocado already compares the expected output with the actual output of this test. This test, because of this expected output, it's expected to fail right now. Okay, it failed. And the new implementation here is that in the logs, we will have a unified diff information, which is here. This section will be created only when the difference happens, stdout diff. This is the expected output. This is the actual output, and the unified diff is already here in the logs. And you can also see that diff in the file that will be created. Test results, output record, std out. This is the actual standard output, and stdout.diff. This is the new file that's being created, comparing the expected and the actual output. So yeah, that's it.
Right. Yeah, this is simple and very useful. Yes,
Yeah.
simple feature which is incredibly useful. So great job.
Yeah, it is pretty common if you have like any kind of like real world test to generate enough content that you cannot like tell from looking at the screen what was the actual and the expected output, and usually the differences are quite smaller. So yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the same feature affects a standard output and also standard error. We have different files for different outputs in addition to the files that we, for different streams, in addition to the files that we already have, is the std out, std error, and output, which actually merges both of them. Now we have std out diff, std error diff, and everything goes to the log as well.
Okay. Yes, so again, unless it breaks something badly, it will be part of the release. So now let's go to second stage of this meeting, which is to talk about the upcoming release. So we'll focus on easy install, properly defined data files. Basically, right now, Avocado supports virtual environment and all of these, but still it tries to create files in /etc, which breaks in easy install. And we looked at the possibilities, and probably we will try to follow Avocado's recommendation, which is to on Python package install to create files only using pkg resource, so in /user for Linux, and on packaging, like in RPM builds, to also create file in /etc, which should fix the issue with easy install.
So is easy install something that the community have been using a lot lately? Because it seems to me that's been falling out of flavor.
Actually, the problem is that this propagates all the way to setup tools and to pip. So at the core, there is the old easy install code, but it propagates all the way up to the new tools.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you install, if you like, the difference is if you try to install Avocado VT with Python setup UI install, it will try to get Avocado dependency and it will actually fail because you violate outside environment because you try to write to a file which is not in your package.
Mm-hmm.
The same for autotest, so autotest need will be also included.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have, do we need to use Fabric 3 dependency by Kleber? Do you want to elaborate a bit?
Yeah, so Lukash actually pointed out that for some of the optional plugins, like the remote runner, we would need Fabric, and with the port to Python 3, we would have to check if that was a safe bet. So we just went through the history of actually Python 3 Paramiko, which took a few years to get working. We have some big Paramiko fans here, right? Fabric fans,
Oh,
right?
yeah, definitely. Because
But anyway, they got it done on Python 3. So I mean, Paramiko ported to Python 3 to Python cryptography and everything. And we have this non-official port, which is Fabric 3, which I tried it out. And it seems to be safe enough to use at this point, because if not, we won't have those plugins at all on Python 3. Since they are not official packages, I don't expect them to land in distributions. So that means that on RPM or other kinds of distro packages, we'll probably not have optional plugins like Runner Remote, Runner VM, Runner Docker for those Python, like for Python 3 versions. So in the end, this card just means that we experimented with the options, and if people are running from sources, yes, I think we will enable a conditional to make it run with Fabric 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, only on Python 3. Then we have Python 3 AXPEC. There is a long outstanding bug I need to debug, but haven't got to it yet. But hopefully we'll fix that and make AXPEC Python 3 compatible, fully compatible. Then we have Python 3 microtasks by Kleber. I don't think we need to list all of them, but basically you can see that there has been
a lot of work going
a lot
on.
of work. Yep. And if I remember correctly, Kleber was able to make Avocado run work, but it's not yet merged in master.
Yeah.
But it's coming.
So yeah, the milestone that we have on master is that most of the Avocado commands work. Maybe I can just show like really briefly.
From the core Avocado, right?
Yeah, so this is like the core Avocado running on Python 3, and like if you just get some of the commands like config, distro, I don't know, any other command should be working, including, and this is the status of master. So yeah, this is synced with origin master. So we should even be able to list tests, compose tests, something like test. And the branch that we have pull request upstream, it's called Python 3 run, because they actually go a little bit further and allow tests to run. There are few messages that shouldn't make to the standard out. But yeah, overall, the pull request that we have out enables tests to run on Python 3. A lot of most of the unit tests actually pass, but yeah, be sure that we still have a lot of issues. So the status report is that we are almost there, and we should be in shape to actually call for official Python 3 support in the next release, including automated checks and everything.
Awesome.
By the way, worth noting that this is without the 2 to 3, so
Yeah.
it's like the standard, like non-modified sources, which
Yeah.
is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Avocado VT at Avocado and other requirements. This is basically what fails due to easy install because Avocado can't be installed via this construction.
So is the ultimate goal here to get Avocado VT as well running on Python 3?
No, this is not related to Python 3. This is related to basically simpler setup for Avocado VT. I mean,
Sure.
just to create a virtual environment and install all dependencies for Avocado VT, which will also install Avocado.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we were lucky enough to break the bonds of Python 2.6 on Avocado itself, but we
Mhm.
cannot do that yet with Avocado VT. So
No, absolutely not.
supporting 2.6, 2.7, and 3 would be really painful.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Then you have checkout functionality should allow for combined output. Basically, the status is that there is a support for output, but it can be misaligned because first we like separate output and error, and then we merge it together, which can misalign the results. But Clever is working on it. Then we have deal with Travis CI limitations, maximum job runtime. You may have noticed that your pull requests are getting red crosses, which is due to the fact that we want to keep it bisect to work. So we check every single commit, and not only the commit of your pull request, but all commits from the first of your commit till the master branch. That can lead to some issues as it may take longer than 50 minutes, which is the Travis limitation.
Let's see. Why don't we just check the commits from that particular branch?
Because it's still possible that like you can modify. I mean, you have a certain version, right? I think I tried to describe it here.
Mm-hmm.
No, I described it without the words. Never mind. So you have like this feature, then this get merged here. But if you bisect it, you can, for example, here you can modify a function which is used in some later commits, and you don't check. I mean, the location where you checked is different, so you don't have, for example, the feature here and here when you're checking the commit. So you really need to check.
Yeah, I understand that, but isn't that a bit too excessive? I mean, you have your work, and you should be checking your commits. Other pull requests should be checked individually, and I understand there might be issues from this diagram, but maybe we should consider it so unlikely that we could, sort of skip that.
Well, that is also proposed here, actually, that we propose that on pull requests, we will only check the checks, the commits, and in the keep checking the full check on master check because that has a higher timeout. So yeah, that's also one of the things we want to enable. But another outcome of this will probably be, I mean, there's already existing script to run the same check locally, and we will require from maintainers to run this check manually, and then merge and override, for example, the Travis check. Because, I mean, even with this, you can get failure with more than, I think, 7 commits, and some pull requests have more than 7 commits.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, this we first we wanted to use how is it called? CentOS CI or so. CentOS CI, but it did not work out somehow. So we will keep with Travis CI, but in case of failure because of a timeout, we'll override the result manually.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate we being thorough. It's really appreciated, but you gotta find some balance, especially because Travis is offering the infrastructure for free, so it's understandable that they put limits to the amount of time we use.
Sure. I mean, nothing is for free, but it's free for us. So yeah, we are working on this, and some changes are expected. Then we have a bug of writing to standard output and standard error, but not the standard output, but the file descriptor 1 and file descriptor 2 directly. Should not affect the runner. Collabor is working on it. It actually requires quite a lot of changes because this is the direct write to the file descriptor, not just the write to standard output.
And why we can actually separate altogether before the test process is forked, we also found out that we are actually producing output from the test processes, which we shouldn't. So it has a little bit.
Yes. So basically, the current situation works well, but it's not structurally correct. Yeah. So Collabor is working on like complete rework of that. So basically, the test process will just write some messages, and the main process will create the files and outputs. And then we have VT, allow extra repos with cartridge config. Do you want to elaborate on this, or I think it's here from last time?
This is a bit dormant. The idea is to allow extra configuration repos because we have seen a lot of people dealing with upstream configuration, but also their local ones. So this is just a way of allowing these configurations to be merged at bootstrap time.
Again, for Avocado VT.
Yeah.
And then we have request for comment, multiple machine support for tests. Also like.
Yeah, it's a big task, which we discussed a lot already. I'm penning a V2 with updates from the last release, but yeah, other things got in the way.
Okay. So this is already a bit worked on. Then we have several things in our backlog. So we'll focus on single data. There get TMP there per interpreter breaks multiple jobs.
Yeah, so this was one of the issues that we found out while doing the job API work. I think this is, we have had a lot of changes, so I think we even have a chance of an easy fix there.
Yep. Basically, we have a TMP there per execution, which doesn't scale with the JEP API. Then we have tool to deduplicate, merge standard output and standard expected files. Collabor, do you want to introduce it? I know it's.
Yeah, so when we run the output check record now, since we get the most specific location of data files, it could be that you run the same test with 1,000 variations. And if you're writing the expected output of those, Avocado will put 1,000 files into the most specific location, which will follow the variant location. While it makes sense to keep things that way because we cannot like foretell if all the files are the same or if they are supposed to be the same, maybe a user can later say, oh, by the way, there should be no changes in the output generated, even with the 1,000 variations. Maybe that's the use case. So we're thinking about a tool that will say, oh, by the way, all those files down into this level of the tree are the same, so you may want to just put one at the file level or at the test level. That's what this tool would be about.
Yep. And first it will start easy and maybe then add features.
Does it make sense? Should you guys? Yeah.
Then we have discussed a way to control export of parameters as environment variables. Basically, the simple tests now propagate the varianter parameters as environment variables, which is kind of cool and good because you may want to send some variables to your simple tests, but it can also break the results pretty badly, like, for example, changing the path or LD library path, etc., can break your environment. So this is like we have worked on RFC to maybe standardize this.
Can what was the problem again?
If you run a simple test with a varianter file like -m foo.yaml, it will propagate the all of the parameters,
transfer parameters
into environment variables.
Right.
And you can accidentally, for example, modify the path, which may affect the execution of your simple test.
Right, but aren't we prefixing? Like, isn't there a sort of
no
prefix / namespace system?
No, there isn't, because that way you wouldn't be able to modify like basic parameters, like for example debug, because like you can run your simple binary and you may want to enable debug a variable.
And that's the point of this discussion.
Yep. So this card is not to implement it. This card is to start the discussion. So next time we will have perhaps more ideas on work
of that, and only if the user chooses to.
So the idea is basically be able to pass arbitrary environment variables in multiplexer files. That's
and not break the system.
Sketchy. That seems a little sketchy because we might clobber important. Yeah, I see the problem, and I didn't know that the recollection I had was that we were prefixing it with avocado _.
We are prefixing just the important information that avocado itself makes available, like version,
data there,
yeah.
So this is prefixed, but this was not prefixed because the use case basically was, okay, enable variables mode, enable debug mode, enable or like change a number of stressors, etc., which usually does not allow you to specify the prefix, right?
Yeah, this seems like the perfect opportunity for the user to shoot itself on foot. So,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Okay. So I basically what I expect is some blacklist with maybe force overriding to really say I really want to override this variable, but let's not to get in details because this is an RFC card.
Sure.
Okay, fix the issue with systemd and spawn. There were some changes in packaging, and we currently are using a workaround with -- old change roots, so we need to actually address the issue unless it was already fixed, because we haven't checked yet. Then we have defaults to recursive. Basically, you may have noticed the feature where you say that this test should be recursively evaluated, and it allows you to inherit test methods from previous classes. And this has been with us for some while, and we think that it should be the default behavior. So we'll probably switch in the next sprint. Then we have a documentation on how to create base test class. Basically, lots of users asked us that they run all tests, but they usually share some portion of code. Take avocado-framework as example, which is our implementation of basecast for virtualization. But there are others like cockpit modularity, etc. So the point is to write a nice documentation to simplify this to newcomers. And then we have JOS for PPC and ARC. JOS is our version of really stripped down Fedora. Minimized disk like around 200 megabytes compressed, but we want to also ship it for Power and for ARM because they keep using us more and more frequently. Then we have broken Python 2.6 Avocado VT check. Yeah, this is just Travis check in Travis for Avocado VT, not for Avocado, but for Avocado VT does not work. Then we have test loader adopt implementation to the new plugin ARM architecture. Basically, the ---- loaders implementation is older than the new plugin infrastructure we are using, so we need to port it to use Stevedore instead of our custom implementation. So pretty much internal change. And then we have define and improve sources of test params. I think we also discussed this. But basically, currently people are abusing the multiplexer, which is one of the variant implementation to inject some arbitrary basic data into their tests. So instead of that, we want to create another way of specifying params like parameter files without any multiplexation, etc., which should be easier and not really abusing the infrastructure. So this is where we are heading towards in the release 56. Do you have any questions, or do you want to improve priorities of some other tasks you have, or do you have any other issues you would like to discuss?
No,
Nothing here.
I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm glad to see more people coming, and so have a nice day. And and by the way, I wanted to announce that next sprint may be a bit longer because the core of the Avocado team is attending KVM forum. So if you're in Prague next week or so, yeah, next week, right? You can meet us there, and don't expect this sprint to be 3 weeks long, but probably 4 weeks long is more realistic.
Yep. Understand. You guys have a lot of fun in Prague.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, everyone. See you next time.
Bye bye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.